Okay, so today I will be speaking about the Ebola hemorrhagic fever and the 2014 outbreak of this disease in West Africa. Uh, Wait, I'm just trying to figure out how to go to the next slide. Oh, I see the arrow. Okay, so the disease. Ebola is caused by Ebola viruses, which is a virological taxon. Signs and symptoms of this disease typically start between 2 days and 3 weeks after contracting the virus. The disease has an extremely high risk of death, killing between 25 and 90% of those infected, with an average of about 50%. The virus spreads through direct contact with bodily fluids and through contact with an item or through contact with items recently contaminated with bodily fluids. Symptoms. The incubation period for Ebola is usually between 2 and 21 days, usually lasting around 10 days. Symptoms take effect immediately after the incubation period, and often death soon follows. The disease begins with flu-like symptoms, so fatigue, headache, muscle pain, weakness, etc., and after only a few days of these symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain will follow. After these unfortunate symptoms, chest pain, severe headaches, uh, and confusion follow. In about half the cases, around 6 days into experiencing symptoms, large red, bumpy, and extremely painful rashes can develop. So that's the picture in the bottom right corner. A week after the symptoms I just listed, it is common for bleeding to occur, although heavy bleeding is not common. Blood usually appears in the vomit, mucus, and stool of people or animals infected. Luckily, only a day or so, and sometimes a week after bleeding starts, recovery will begin. Sadly, for around 50% of people with this disease, recovery will not start, death will occur, usually anywhere between 6 and 16 days after the first symptoms show. Transmission. Between people, Ebola disease spreads only by direct contact with blood or bodily fluids of a person who has developed symptoms of the disease. Body fluids that may contain the Ebola virus include saliva, mucus, vomit, feces, sweat, tears, breast milk, urine, and semen. The World Health Organization states that only people who are very sick are able to spread Ebola disease through saliva, and that the whole virus has not been reported to be transmitted through sweat. So it's pretty uncommon for the virus to be transmitted through sweat or saliva. It's usually through blood or feces. Most people spread the virus through blood, feces, and vomit. The Ebola virus may be able to persist for more than 6 months in the semen after recovery, which can lead to infections via sexual intercourse. And the WHO states that you should wait at least 6 months before uh, any kind of activity with somebody who had recently had the disease but recovered. Ebola can also occur in the breast milk of women after recovery, but it is not known when it is safe to breastfeed again. Otherwise, people who have recovered are not infectious. Dead bodies, although, do remain infectious. Thus, people handling human remains in practices such as traditional burial rituals or more modern processes such as embalming are at risk. Approximately 69% of the cases of Ebola infections in Guinea during the 2014 outbreak are believed to have been contracted via unprotected handling of corpses. So the 2014 outbreak. In March 2014, the World Health Organization reported a major Ebola outbreak in Guinea, which still continues to this day. Researchers traced the outbreak to a 1-year-old child who died in December 2013. The disease then rapidly spread to the neighboring countries of Liberia and Sierra Leone. It is the largest Ebola outbreak ever documented and the first recorded in that region. The WHO helped slow down the spread of Ebola considerably. On the 8th of August 2014, the WHO declared that the epidemic to be an international public health emergency, and by mid-August 2014, Doctors Without Borders reported the situation in Liberia's capital, Monrovia, as catastrophic, and that it was deteriorating daily. As of the 15th of April 2015, 25,890 suspected cases and 10,717 deaths have been reported. It was not until the 28th of January 2015 that the WHO reported that for the first time since the week ending 29th of June 2014, there had been fewer than 100 new confirmed cases reported in 1 week in the most affected countries. On the 19th of September, Eric Duncan flew from his native Liberia to Texas. 5 days later, he began showing symptoms and visited a hospital but was sent home. A few days after that, he was confirmed to be the first case of Ebola in North America. His condition worsened and he returned to the hospital on the 28th of September, where he died on the 8th of October. Okay. So this is the article I chose to summarize about Ebola. So the article spoke about tests that are commencing in West Africa for an Ebola vaccine. The CDC has stated that it will vaccinate 6,000 workers who are in direct contact with the disease. The vaccine was created at Canada's National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg by a biotech company called Newlink Genetics, as well as a pharmaceutical company called Merck. It will prove hard to successfully test the vaccine, as less and less people are contracting this deadly disease as of late, so there will be less test subjects. Only 9 new cases had been reported by the end of the week that started with April 5th. Because of this issue, there might not be enough cases for proper testing. And in another country, which Liberia, the testing has been halted. According to Dr. Anne Shu-Chat, the director of the CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, the way in which the test will run has been designed so it is able to determine whether or not the vaccine works. Originally, some people would have been vaccinated in groups and some would have been delayed 6 months, but the doctors would expect the number of cases to be lower in those who had been affected earlier. Even though the disease counts are way down from what they were earlier in 2014, doctors are still in a rush to find an effective vaccine to eliminate the disease once and for all. And that is the end.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that there are still new cases being detected.
Yeah.
In what countries was that again?
I think it's mainly Liberia, because that kind of was the country that was hit the worst with it. But there's also still new, like very few, but there have been new cases in Guinea, and then also, yeah, Guinea and Liberia were the main ones.
And do they have any idea yet how the disease jumped to humans in this case?
Well, most of like how it was first contracted?
Yeah, whether it was what's called a zoonotic,
Well, they know
or
that
whether it
fruit
could.
bats naturally carry the disease,
Okay.
and there are a lot of fruit bats in West Africa, and they're not actually affected by the disease; they just carry it. So it's most likely that somebody was bitten by a fruit bat, or maybe they were exposed to guano or something like that, or a dead fruit bat. Or
Yeah, because you did mention that this is the first time it's been detected in this part of
yeah,
Africa,
it is. It is.
because normally it's found in Central Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't. Do they Have you found any explanation of how it migrated that far from what is normally its host area?
Well, like I said before, they traced the patient 0, I guess, to, let me just find what I said before. It was to a
It was in
1-year-old,
Guinea.
1-year-old baby in Guinea. So I don't know. I don't. When he died in December 2013, and they traced it after that, obviously. Um, so I don't think they actually found how that child contracted the disease, but it's definitely from what I read, it was most likely had to do with bats because they naturally carry it, and that's kind of where it comes from.
Okay. Okay, Joe. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm glad that you got to present.
Yeah.